Look at the grocery bill for a moment. Not the food, the bill. That is where a lot of households are feeling the pressure in 2026. The cart looks ordinary. The trip feels normal. But the total keeps climbing, and by the time you get to the car or the kitchen table, you are staring at a receipt that does not seem to match what you actually bought. If that has happened to you, I want to say this clearly at the start. You are not imagining it, and you are not failing. A lot of the squeeze comes from a store environment built to make value harder to see. Packaging is designed to confuse. Shelves are arranged to nudge. Checkout lanes are built to catch you at your weakest point. And the biggest money leak is not always the price tag itself. It is the chain of small decisions that quietly pushes you past your limit. In this report, we are going to walk through 8 grocery traps that drain budgets without making much noise. Some happen before you buy. Some happen after. Some are hidden in plain sight on the shelf, and some show up later in the fridge, where good intentions turn into waste. By the end, you will have a simple way to spot the traps before they cost you more. Not extreme couponing, not panic buying. Just a calmer, more deliberate system that helps you protect your money. Start with the first trap, because it is one of the easiest to miss. A price can look small and still be expensive. That sounds obvious until you're standing in the aisle and comparing 2 packages that look almost the same. One is larger, one is smaller, one is on sale. One has a bright tag. And your eye goes straight to the big number on the front, because that is what the store wants you to notice first. But the number on the front is not always the real story. The real story is often unit price, price per ounce, price per pound, price per count. That is the only comparison that tells you what you are truly paying for the amount inside. This is where grocery budgets get quietly damaged. A bigger box is not always a better deal. A family-size package is not always cheaper per serving. Sometimes the smaller item on the shelf costs less overall, but more per ounce. Sometimes the larger one is only cheaper because the store has made the label easier to notice. The store counts on shoppers being tired. It counts on shoppers being in a rush. It counts on shoppers making a good guess instead of doing the small math. And when your budget is tight, good guesses can get expensive. The practical move is simple. Train yourself to look below the sticker shock and find the unit price. If 2 items serve the same purpose, compare the cost by ounce, pound, or count. Not by package size, not by shelf drama, by the actual value. That one habit alone can change a shopping trip. But then there is the second trap, and this one is even more frustrating because it hides in the item you already trust. Shrinkflation. This is when a product looks familiar, the price stays the same or rises, but the amount inside quietly drops. Maybe the cereal box gets a little thinner. Maybe the snack bag looks full from the front but has less inside. Maybe the roll of paper goods is smaller, or the container is a little lighter, or the package keeps the same shape while the contents are reduced just enough that you do not notice until it has gone faster than it used to be. That is what makes shrinkflation so effective. It does not always feel like a price hike. It feels like your memory is wrong. You think, did I use this faster? Did I forget? Did I pour too much? But the visual proof is often right there in the package itself. The depth is different. The count is lower. The ounces are smaller. And once you start seeing it, you cannot unsee it. This is where a lot of households lose money without realizing the leak is happening. They keep buying the same item out of habit, expecting the same value, and the store keeps offering less for more. The control move here is not to panic and replace everything. It is to compare the package you are buying now with the version you bought before. Check the net weight. Check the count. Check the serving size if that matters for your household. If something seems to run out faster than before, trust the numbers, not the memory. Now let's move to the third trap, because this is where many shoppers start overspending before they even reach the checkout. Store layout is not neutral. The ends of aisles are not random. Eye-level shelves are not random. The little display by the freezer, the bright stack near the entrance, the snack item placed where the line slows down. All of it is there to influence what goes into the cart. Stores know that the more time you spend looking, the more likely you are to add something you did not come for. That is why end caps matter. That is why checkout lanes matter. That is why the most tempting items are often placed where you are most likely to be tired, waiting, or mentally done with the trip. A person can walk in with a careful list and still leave with extra drinks, extra snacks, an extra sauce, an extra item that looked useful in the moment and useless at home. And the damage is not always dramatic. It is not one huge mistake. It is $5 here, $7 there, $10 on a thing you did not plan to buy. That is how a careful budget gets chipped away. The store is built for speed and temptation, not restraint. So the practical move is to shop like someone who has already seen the game. Keep your list visible. Avoid browsing the ends of aisles unless you need what is there. Do not let the cart become a holding area for things you are still deciding on. If it is not on the plan, it needs a strong reason to go in. Because every extra item has a hidden cost. It is not just the price. It is the chance that something else you bought with good intentions will go unused. And that brings us to the fourth trap, which is one of the most common reasons grocery money disappears after the store, not during it. Food forgotten is food wasted. A fridge can look full and still be leaking money. A pantry can look organized and still contain products that are buried behind newer items. A bag of produce gets pushed to the back. A container gets forgotten on the lower shelf. Leftovers are stacked behind drinks. A half-used package slips out of sight, and then by the time you remember it, the food is no longer worth keeping. This is not a character flaw. It is a storage problem. Most waste does not happen because people do not care. It happens because life gets busy, shelves get crowded, and the oldest item is the least visible item. That means the solution is not perfection. It is rotation. When you bring groceries home, move older food forward. Put new items behind what needs to be used first. Keep the most perishable things where you can see them. Make the front row the reminder row. You do not need a magazine kitchen. You need a system that helps food get used before it turns into loss. If you have ever thrown out wilted produce, expired yogurt, or a half-used package you forgot was there, that is not just waste. That is money you already spent that never had a chance to work for you. Now here is the fifth trap, and it is one of the most expensive because it looks harmless. Convenience has a premium. Pre-cut fruit, pre-shredded cheese, single-serve snacks, ready-made meals, pre-washed greens, deli items that solve a problem fast. Sometimes convenience is absolutely worth it. Sometimes it saves time, effort, and even waste. But when convenience becomes the default, the weekly bill starts to bend upward in a way that is easy to ignore in the moment and hard to ignore later. That is because you are paying for labor, packaging, and convenience all at once. And the package usually makes it feel smaller than it is. A tiny tub, a neat tray, a single-serving cup. It looks manageable, it feels controlled. But if you compared it to the whole food version, you would often see the real cost more clearly. The trap is not convenience itself. The trap is letting convenience decide for you every time. A budget gets strained when every item on the list is chosen for ease instead of value. The control move is to make convenience intentional. Use it where it truly protects your time or reduces waste. Skip it where it is just an expensive habit in a nicer wrapper. And now we need to pause for a reset, because this is the point where a lot of people start thinking the problem is that they need more discipline. That is not the whole story. What you are really seeing is a system of small leaks. One leak is the shelf label that makes comparison harder. One leak is shrinkflation. One leak is layout. One leak is forgotten food. One leak is the convenience premium. One leak is impulse checkout items. One leak is emotional shopping. One leak is weak storage and no rotation. No single one of those usually breaks a budget by itself, but together, they can turn a normal grocery run into a slow drain. So here is the reset. Before you shop, ask 3 questions. What is the unit price? What do I already have at home? Will I actually use this in the next week? That is it. Not because you need to become a perfect planner. Not because you need to calculate every gram of food in the store. But because those 3 questions move you from reactive shopping to deliberate shopping. And deliberate shopping is where control starts to come back. Now, with that reset in mind, look at the sixth trap. This is the one that gets people at the last possible moment. Checkout pressure. Whether you are using self-checkout or a cashier lane, the final stretch is where the store has one last chance to reach your wallet. Candy, drinks, batteries, gum, little snacks, travel items, health items. Things that seem easy to justify because you are already there, already spending, already almost done. That is the danger. The mind says, it is just one more thing. But the register is full of things built to trigger that exact thought. And self-checkout can make it worse because you are doing the scanning yourself while tracking prices, watching the total rise, and trying not to slow down the line. That is not a calm decision environment. That is a pressure environment. A few small add-ons at the end can quietly undo the discipline you used in the rest of the store. The control move is to treat the checkout as a finish line, not a browsing zone. If an item was not planned before the trip, it should face a higher standard at the register than it would in the aisle. Ask one question. Do I need this, or am I just tired? Tired is expensive. Now let's talk about the seventh trap, because this one is more personal, and a lot of people do not realize they are doing it until they see the pattern. Buying for a mood, not a meal plan. Most of us do not shop in a perfectly logical state every time. Sometimes we are stressed, sometimes bored, sometimes lonely, sometimes trying to feel prepared for a week we do not fully trust yet. So we buy extra snacks for a future mood, extra ingredients for a meal idea that sounds good in the store but will not happen on Wednesday, duplicate items because the list was unclear, food that looks like a solution in the moment and becomes clutter later. This is how a grocery budget gets blurred. You do not need to be reckless for this to happen. You just need to be human. That is why a simple weekly list matters so much. Not a perfect meal calendar, not a rigid food program, just a short list of what you actually plan to use. The fewer vague purchases you make, the fewer things you forget in the fridge or pantry. And the fewer forgotten items you have, the more of your spending turns into actual meals instead of waste. If you have ever come home with groceries and then still felt like there was nothing to eat, that is usually not a food shortage. It is a planning gap. And planning gaps cost money. The practical move is to anchor each trip in what you already know will happen. Breakfasts you actually eat. Lunches you actually pack. Dinners you are realistic enough to make. The goal is not a perfect life. The goal is less drift. Now, the eighth trap is the one that closes the loop. Because after all the shopping, all the comparing, all the planning, the budget can still get lost at home. The store is only the beginning. Once the groceries are inside your house, value depends on what happens next. If food is not stored clearly, it gets buried. If leftovers are not visible, they get forgotten. If containers do not help you see what needs to be used, food turns into background noise. If pantry items are not rotated, the oldest food is the first to disappear into waste. This is where control becomes real. An organized fridge is not about looking impressive. It is about making food easier to use. A clear front row. Labeled containers. Older items in sight. Produce where you can reach it. Staples grouped together. A place for leftovers that does not hide them. That kind of setup protects money all week long. And if you live with other people, this matters even more. Because one person's good intentions can be undone by another person not knowing what was already bought. The solution is not to monitor everyone. It is to make the system visible enough that the household can follow it without effort. This is the part a lot of budgeting advice skips. The budget is not only what you spend, it is what you keep from turning into waste. That is why the final lesson is bigger than grocery shopping. The full pattern is this. Stores are not simply selling food. They are presenting a series of decisions inside an environment that quietly rewards speed, habit, and impulse. If you respond with habit, you pay more. If you respond with guesswork, you lose value. If you buy for the moment instead of the week, you waste food. If you ignore unit price, you may overpay without seeing it. If you let convenience become automatic, the bill climbs. If you treat the checkout like a harmless last stop, the cart gets bigger. If you bring food home without a rotation system, money disappears in the fridge. That is the whole machine. And once you see it as a system, you stop blaming yourself for every painful receipt. That does not mean you have no control. It means your control works better when it is aimed at the real pressure points. So, if you want the simplest version of this report, keep it in 3 layers. First, compare true value. Second, buy only what you can actually use soon. Third, make the home a place where food stays visible and usable. That is how you protect your money without living in fear of the grocery aisle. You do not need to win every trip. You just need to reduce the leaks. And the more you do that, the more your household starts to feel manageable again. If this video helped you see the system a little more clearly, stay with us. The next reports are built the same way. Calm, practical, and focused on helping you keep control of your money in a world that keeps trying to pull it away.